Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, welcome to Art Tips with John, the special. In today's show, we are going to be talking about paint and more paint. We're going to be telling you which paint we personally recommend, which ones to definitely stay away from, and which paint does what. So all that remains is to welcome you to today's show. Okay folks, well in today's show, as I said right at the beginning, we are talking about paint and more paint. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, John, what kind of paint should I be using? And my answer is often the same. It's whatever kind of paint works for you. Sadly, one of the things that is really lacking out there is product knowledge. A lot of people buy paint because they think, oh, well, this is paint, it must do what it says on the tin. But as you will see later on, not every paint is the same quality. And that's what we're looking for here in quality. But before I get to that, I want to tell you about three specific types of paint that are the most common and most popular. We're going to look at oil paint, we're going to look at acrylic paint, and we're going to look at watercolors, the pluses and the negatives, and brands that I would recommend and brands that I would definitely encourage you to stay away from. So let's start, shall we, with oil paint. Behind me is an acrylic oil painting that I've been working on. Now I left it up here, number one, to dry, but number two, to show you some of the techniques and some of the textures that is actually on this painting. If you're looking for the oil painting section, it's up here in the mountains. Now as you can see here, the oil paint that we've used here is the white and the brown. It creates a really awesome texture, and that's the first thing that I want to pull out. Oil paint, let me tell you right now, is a great product, is a great material. It has been used by artists through thousands and thousands of years, and it is absolutely loved and world renowned. That is, that is not even a question. But is it really the best thing for you? Well, I want to give you the options and then let you make an educated decision. So oil paint here, we can create some amazing texture. Have you ever wanted to go up to a painting perhaps that maybe you've purchased and you just want to touch it? You want to feel the lumps in the mountain. You want to feel the bark of the trees. You want to feel the branches. You want to feel it really coming to life because it sucks you in even more. Oil paint and acrylic paint can really do that, but when oil paint dries, as opposed to acrylic, it dries solid. It really does dry solid. There are pluses and negatives with that, and I'm going to touch on those in a second. So that's the first thing, that from a texture point of view, you can create some amazing depth and amazing feeling on your artwork. The second thing is it dries slowly. Now that can be a positive and a negative. If you're looking for something that maybe you can do over a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, oil paint is definitely a recommendation I would give to you, because oil paint is something that it doesn't dry out really quickly. In fact, it can take up to 2.5 years to actually dry completely, depending on the brand of oil paint that you use. This one in particular, because it's small amounts, it'll probably take a couple of weeks to dry completely, but when it does, it will leave some amazing effects. One other thing that I absolutely love about oil paint is that it leaves a matted finish, whereas with acrylic paint in particular, because it's more of a plastic kind of material, it leaves a shiny finish. Oil paint tends to leave more of a dull, kind of, just subdued kind of texture upon the canvas, and that can again be a plus and a negative. But it depends really what you're looking for here. So, those are some of the positives. In terms of the texture, you can really build things up. In terms of the drying time, so if you want to work over a long period of time, you can do. In terms of the fact that it's been used for years and people have absolutely loved it. Some of the best artworks in galleries around the world are filled with oil paint. But now let's look at some of the cons, shall we? Oil paint can yellow. It can create some very dull tones, and that's partly due to the linseed oil that's within it. When it's gone over a certain period of time, it really starts to yellow, create not this particularly nice effect, and it does need to be treated. Oil paint, though long lasting, needs to be treated once every now and then, and that's the same for any product that you are going to use, full stop. The second thing is it gives off harmful emissions. Now, the oil paint itself, I don't believe gives off harmful emissions, but the paint thinners used to create some of the waterline techniques that we will use often they're what give off the harmful emissions. And that's, so you've got a house full of oil paintings. What you got to remember is the oil is going to be absorbed every time you breathe, unless it's properly treated. It is vital to do that, and people often forget that. They just create an oil painting, go off and sell it, and then people are breathing in this oil all the time. Okay, so, and it does have a very strong smell if you get close enough to it. Also, as I say, if you're using paint thinners as well, try to use an odorless paint thinner, because if you're using white spirit or turpentine, the chances are, unless you're doing it in a ventilated area, you're breathing in that toxic fumes as well, and it can cause all sorts of health problems. So that's something to bear in mind when you are using oil paint. So it can yellow, it can give off harmful emissions. The other thing is as well, if it isn't treated properly and isn't kept moist, it can crack. Now, a lot of people forget this. Again, they do their art, they do their oil painting, they don't treat it before they send it off, and maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years it will crack, because as it dries out, it's like pottery, it will only last for so long, and the problem then is it's got no moisture left, it's absorbing all the moisture, and it just cracks. So someone that's paid maybe £10,000 for an oil painting, it is now cracked, and you know, people aren't going to enjoy this. People are going to be pretty hot about it. And the final thing that I want to draw your attention to, aside from it cracking, yellowing, giving off harmful emissions, is it will fade over time. And that's again the same with any material. It will fade from light exposure. But again, if it's properly treated and properly looked after, there isn't any reason why it can't go on for hundreds and hundreds of years. These days, there are a ton of different materials that you can use, from resins to varnishes to sprays to brushstroke varnishes as well, that will protect your painting for a long, long time. People are more educated now on how to look after paintings as well, but the fantastic thing is, hundreds and hundreds of years down the line, number one, you're going to be dead, but number two, there are, and even are currently now, some amazing painting restorers that can bring it back up to life, that can clean it, and can do an incredible job with it. So those are the pluses and negatives of oil paint. The only thing that I will say now is products that we personally recommend. We look at paint specifically for the pigment that's in there, for the coverage, for the size, for the cost, all that kind of stuff. But two that I can definitely recommend is this one from PBO, a great acrylic paint. Great oil paint, has great coverage, great pigment, means it's not going to be too see-through, isn't going to fade, isn't going to crack really quickly. And the other one from Winsor & Newton, which I absolutely love. I've used Winsor & Newton for years. And a little bit more pricey, but a really good product indeed. So we've looked at the pros and cons of oil paint. Now we're going to look at the pros and cons of acrylic paint. So we've looked at the pros and cons of oil paint. Now we're going to move on and look at something I know very well, and I'm an authority figure on, the pros and cons of acrylic paint. Okay folks, so a lot of this painting has been done in acrylic. Now, acrylic really is one of my favourites for so many reasons, and I'm just going to list off a few here. It's not too messy, it doesn't give off harmful emissions, it doesn't crack, it doesn't fade. Okay, those are four really big things for me, especially giving off harmful emissions, and it's not too bad for the environment. You know, it's not going to puncture the ozone, which is fantastic. With any material, you're going to have some carbon footprint that's there, but we do try to minimize them, and we do try to, to do our bit as well. So as I say, the majority of this painting is done in acrylics. Now, as I say, thoroughly loved acrylic. I switched to acrylic in 2012 because I found when I was traveling, it was much easier to travel with. When you're doing events in particular, you can set up your paint stand and nobody's needing to worry about paint fumes or anything like that, or turpentine fumes or anything from oil paint. Acrylic paint is definitely what I would recommend if you are doing galleries, or if you've got a small space where you don't want to create too much mess. The good thing is, if you do make a mess on a hard wood floor, for example, or a table, you can just wipe it up. And it's really fantastic. From a texture point of view, you can create mountain or snow-capped mountain type effects, which are just absolutely incredible. It works similar to oil paint, but it is water-based, so it means that you can clean your brushes with water as opposed to turpentines and thinners and things. you know, over the last 40 years, this has become more of the preferred material to use for actually by professionals all around the world, and I can't recommend it highly enough. You can create some beautiful, bright techniques and textures onto your canvas, as you can see here, beautiful bright skies, and it will last. I mean, it will last really, really well, and even more so if you protect it, if you varnish it, if you take all the necessary precautions and everything, it is really, really good. Okay, so some of the negatives of acrylic paint, one of them in particular that is always an issue for me is not only the coverage, but also the transparency. Okay, so when you're trying to paint something, if you have a black canvas, for example, like this one started out as a base color, when you're painting over it, sometimes you need to do 2 or 3 layers. With oil paint, you tend to do just 1 layer because, again, it's a thicker paint, there's more pigment that's in it, but also with acrylic paint, there's less there. Again, it's more water-based, so therefore you're going to need to do a lot more work to get the actual result that you want. But the good thing is, because acrylic paint dries really, really quickly, you are able to do the work very, very quickly. So you can literally do this, paint this, leave it to dry, come back a couple of hours later and continue right on with it, or work on a different section. I thoroughly love it because it keeps its bright colours as well. It doesn't yellow, crack, fade, all of the things that I mentioned, and it is certainly my material of choice. As I say, I haven't got too many negatives to say about acrylic paint in particular, but one of the things that I do definitely want to let you guys know is product recommendation, and we've got a few here. So we use one of my personal favourites, one of my new personal favourites is Dale & Rowney's System 3 Acrylic Paint, which I thoroughly love. I can't recommend this enough because it is a good, thick paint. It's well made. It is a little bit more expensive for something like this. You're probably going to pay £7.99, so about $10, something like that, but it will last you. And if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper, I believe actually that they are the same. Yeah, they are the same in terms of amount that you're going to get. Then Dale & Rowney's Graduate Acrylic is a good one. I believe they're actually the same price as well. But I thoroughly love both of these. One of the ones that I cannot stress enough to definitely stay away from is Reeves Ready Mix Paint. And it's branded in a lot of shops as acrylic. It's actually what we call a gouache, which is verging on the lines of watercolors kind of things. This one will crack. A lot of the cheaper acrylic paint, sorry, will crack, and that's something you've got to be very much aware of. I know when I was teaching, that several times we found out that students' work, because we'd use this paint in particular, it was recommended to us, it was budget friendly as well, and initially it was fine, but within a few weeks, as I say, it did start to cause issues. Had some strange colour mixes as well, that sometimes when you're doing a seascape, I believe for the section above the horizon line, it would actually turn the wave blue. For whatever reason, it was just like a chemical reaction between the colours, and underneath it would leave it white, and there was no issue. But I would definitely recommend staying away from Reeves Ready Mix Gouache Acrylic Paint, which is what it's labelled as in many of the shops. Another one that I would recommend for beginners is Baker Ross's Ready Mix Paint. I've used that a lot. Again, the problem for that is a similar issue with Reeves Ready Mix Paint. Is the coverage and the transparency that's there. It's very thin, it's very it has a severe lack of pigmentation, very little, you know, you got to do a lot more basically to get these kind of colors. If budget is an issue though, I would recommend this, because I pick up an entire box of, I believe, 25 bottles of paint, I think, for about £50, which is probably about $75, something like that, and they are 500ml as well. So it depends really what you're looking for. If you're doing this on a budget and you're looking just for a lot of paint, you know, that's going to last you over a while, and maybe you've got children. Baker Ross, I definitely would recommend. If you're looking to do this more as a professional artist or to have a professional feel to it, System 3 in particular and The Graduate are two paints that I would definitely recommend. One of the material and product that I would definitely recommend for acrylic paint is the Masters collection. A little bit harder to come by at the moment because of COVID and the issues that that's causing. But the Masters collection, though the paints are smaller and a lot more expensive, they are incredible paints. They are, in fact, some of the best. In fact, let's scratch that. They are the best that I've ever used. If you're looking at doing this as more of a profession and wanting definitely more of that, you know, upper echelons, I'm setting myself apart kind of feel, the Masters collection is definitely the way to go. Of course, you can get, if you've been watching your emails, you can purchase from our website as well using our affiliate link, and it helps us too, and I really do appreciate that. So those are the pluses and negatives of oil paint and acrylic paint. We're going to switch over now to our final, I suppose, product review or material review in watercolor. Okay, so watercolors tend to come in little tubes like this, and they will last you quite a while. It's very simple to use and to set up, and especially if you've got young children, it is perfect. Now I want to walk you through some of the positives of using watercolor. It is a traditional art material. It is as old as time itself. And it's a beautiful, really beautiful style of painting. It's really minimal mess. It's great if you want to travel around as well. What it tends to happen is that you'll have your art box with your paintbrushes in, a little bottle of water, and you will probably have a little set of watercolors. And it's really great. It's fantastic if you want to paint on location, if you're looking at painting landscapes, seascapes, mountainscapes, that kind of thing. It's a really nice, simple, rainy day kind of painting material. One of my best friends and one of my favorite artists of all time is a beautiful watercolor painter, French artist, and just absolutely incredible at what he does. But there are, of course, negatives to every positive that you have, and I want to tell you some of those now. If you are looking to build up texture and these beautiful bright colors like what we have in this painting, then my recommendation would be not to use watercolor. Watercolor is more subdued. It's not as bright. It doesn't leave the same textures that's on there, and it dries very quickly. It is also very unforgiving. If you're doing a watercolor painting and you've sketched everything out, it is very hard sometimes if you make a mistake to remedy that mistake, because again, it doesn't have any real way of doing that. You're pretty much better off starting straight out, certainly in my experience of watercolor. But it is a beautiful style of painting. If you're looking at just starting out and you want to give it a try, I would definitely recommend watercolors. Whatever you choose, whether it's oil paint, acrylic paint, or watercolor, each one you can use in our Art from the Heart or in our Outreach Art training courses available at outreachart.org. And you think you will absolutely love them. So I hope this really helps you to get a little bit clearer now as to what you can do with acrylic paint, what you can do with oil paint, and what you can do with watercolors. Some of the pluses and negatives. I should tell you now that ArtEase, ARTEZE, are one of my personal recommendations when you're using watercolors. Definitely check them out. Again, you can check them out on our website at outreachart.org, and you can purchase through one of our affiliate links. They should be restocked now on Amazon. And if you're looking at just starting out and you just want to get a feel for it, you want to try it, then definitely watercolor or acrylic is where I would recommend that you begin. If you want to try oil paint, you absolutely can, and I definitely recommend you give it a go and just see what you kind of feel and what kind of, what kind of feelings it draws up within you, okay? What kind of things that you really enjoy about it. So I want you to ask yourself the question now, just as we wrap up, what kind of art am I looking to achieve? Am I looking to achieve this kind of art? Am I looking to achieve more the traditional washed out kind of art that watercolor gives? And that's not a bad thing, there is no right and wrong in this. Am I looking at trying to achieve the more oil kind of effect that oil paint will give? Or am I looking for the bright plastic kind of look that acrylic paint will give? And when you've got your answer to that question, you are one step further in knowing the answer to what you want to paint and how you want to paint, and you're also one step closer to building your artistic dreams. Well folks, that's all we've got time for. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of Art Tips with John, the special Paint. And if you have, do please feel free to let us know in the chat box below. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe, and tell a friend, because it's the only way our little channel can grow. If you'd like to support us, you can do it at patreon.com/outreachart. And of course, come and visit us at outreachart.org, the best in what they do in online art courses, because they understand their students, their fears, their concerns. Plus, they can take beginners that have always wanted to learn how to paint, that never ever either had the time or the confidence to be able to do it, and we can get you creating amazing works of art within a couple of lessons. I think you'll absolutely be pleasantly surprised, and give it a go. What have you got to lose at the end of the day? They're great value for money, and if you are even looking for something more special, you can even hire me as your very own art teacher. So what have you got to lose? Until next time, take care, God bless, and I'll see you soon.